This is a film about a visit to Svalbard to see its Russian coal mining towns of Pyramiden and Barentsburg. After crossing the Northeast Passage in the Russian icebreaker Captain Kolesbukta, we sailed from Murmansk across the Barents Sea to Svalbard. Our 2-day-long crossing to Svalbard was uneventful. We sailed up Ice Fjorden to Longyearbyen. We arrived in Longyearbyen hours past our scheduled arrival time, so as we left the Captain Kolesbukta for the last time, it was touch and go whether we'd make it to the pier before our ship sailed for Pyramiden. Pyramiden is a Russian coal mining town that was abandoned in 1998 and is now a ghost town attracting tourists. Fortunately, the ship waited for us and then sailed immediately upon our boarding. We sailed past 2 icebreakers riding at anchor, namely the icebreaker Captain Kolesbukta and the Swedish icebreaker Odin. The Odin is now primarily used for scientific research expeditions in polar regions. There were swells on Billy Fjorden, which made for a lot of movement on board. The Nordenskiold Glacier is some 25 kilometers long and 11 kilometers wide at its terminus, where there are lots of seabirds feeding, including black-legged kittiwakes and Atlantic puffins. Turning away from the glacier, it was time to sail across the fjord to Pyramiden. Due to the Spitsbergen Bergen Treaty, Svalbard is under Norwegian sovereignty. The Spitsbergen Bergen Treaty of 1920 gives signatory countries, including Russia, the right to engage in commercial activities on Svalbard. The treaty has been subsequently renamed the Svalbard Treaty because the Norwegians started referring to the archipelago as Svalbard instead of Spitsbergen. In 1936, the Soviets acquired the rights to use the coal fields at Pyramiden and Barentsburg. Trust Arktikugol, a state-run coal company, assumed ownership of both Pyramiden and Barentsburg and has run operations there since that time. Pyramiden's coal mines were never profitable, so when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the subsidies that supported Arktikugol's operation and hence the town began to thin, resulting in shortages, lower salaries, and poor living standards. In 1996, tragedy descended on Pyramiden when an Arktikugol charter flight from Moscow crashed near Longyearbyen, and all 141 passengers on board heading to Pyramiden were killed. Many of the victims' families pursued lawsuits against Arktikugol, and Pyramiden's morale hit an all-time low. Shortly after the crash, Arktikugol began discussing shuttering Pyramiden, and in the first month of 1998 the decision was finalized, and so on 31 March 1998 the last coal was extracted from the mine, and the approximately 300 workers who still lived there began returning to Russia. Once off the ship, we were met by Sasha, our Russian tour guide. He has worked there during the tour season since 2012, when he was the only person to apply for the job.
Unfortunately, this plan did not come through. It failed because in 1941, suddenly the Second World War started. People started moving back. In 1993, they had to close down the school and to evacuate all the children from Pyramiden because they had no money to keep on running the school. And a few years later, in 1998, the decision was made to close down the coal mine and to close down the settlement as a result, and to send everybody back to the mainland. Well, and it was
The symbolic last ton of coal extracted in 1998 is pilfered by tourists, but Sasha periodically tops it back up. Pyramiden is named for the pyramid-shaped mountaintop looming over the town. Since tourism started in 2007, the summer population of Pyramiden has been 6 in order to run the tours and the hotel with its bar. Polar bears pass through the area from time to time, making it imperative to have someone in the party carrying a rifle, especially hikers. The barracks didn't have their own kitchen, and instead the food was gotten from the impressive canteen building. The dining hall in the canteen has a wonderful mosaic showing an Arctic scene with a Norse god. The peeling paint on the ceiling reminded visitors of the fleeting nature of time. The large kitchen area was full of big cooking appliances. The school has a couple of colorful paintings, including one illustrating the Russian folktale of the Frog Princess. Halfway up the Pyramid Mountain is a Russian sign outlined in rock saying Mir, or peace, while the mine works higher up dominate the town site. At 79 degrees north, Pyramiden has the northernmost bust of Lenin that gazes out forlornly on the failed Soviet town. The cultural palace featured a library, a weightlifting room, a basketball court, and a large auditorium with rows of cushy red seats, where performances took place and movies were shown. The wonderful poster from the Great Patriotic War proclaimed "To the West" in Russian and showed a Soviet soldier knocking down a sign saying "To the East" in German. The projector booth has old rolls of film spread over the floor like a pot of spilled spaghetti. Surprisingly, one of the films was Spartacus, the 1960 American epic historic drama about a slave revolt against the power of Rome. Obviously, the Soviets were not worried about inspiring their own revolt. The Arctic soil is too nutrient poor to support much plant life, so the Soviets imported shiploads of soil from the Ukraine, hence the luxurious lawn on the main square in front of the cultural palace. The giant Arktikugol badge was impressive. Since the abandonment, wildlife has slowly taken over, with nesting gulls vying for coveted windowsill spots to raise their young on the former family apartment building, which is now called the Bird's Palace. The squawks of the gulls can be heard around the ghost town. Finally, we left Pyramiden for the 4-hour boat trip back to Longyearbyen. Arriving back at Longyearbyen, there were now more cruise ships awaiting to pick up passengers for multi-day cruises around Svalbard. The next Russian town to visit from Longyearbyen was Barentsburg. Unlike Pyramiden, Barentsburg is still an active mine. We sailed past a Norwegian Coast Guard cutter that had arrived overnight off Longyearbyen. The ship taking us to Barentsburg was named the MS Polar Girl. The first leg of the voyage to Barentsburg took us across the ice fjord to the Esmark Glacier. Apart from the tourists heading to Barentsburg, there was a group of campers with their dogs, equipment, and polar bear gun being transported to the campsite near the Esmark Glacier. After 3 hours, we arrived at the foot of the Esmark Glacier. This glacier, which has a length of 15 kilometers, has an impressive ocean terminus that stands some 30 meters above the sea level. After lunch, the ship lowered its Zodiac, which was then used to take the campers and their belongings ashore to the campsite near the glacier and to pick up some returning campers. Having finished with the campers, we sailed across Ice Fjorden to Barentsburg. Arriving off the Barentsburg heliport, we could see Barentsburg about 4 kilometers away. During World War II, an Allied force composed primarily of Canadians landed on Svalbard in 1941 to demolish the coal mines, including the one at Barentsburg, to prevent their use by the Germans. Following the demolition, some 2,000 Soviet miners were evacuated to Arktikugol, Russia, on the Empress of Canada. Coal mining has been the key industry in Barentsburg ever since the settlement was established in the early 1930s. In the 1970s, the population was about 1,000 and subsequently gradually shrunk to the current level of about 450. Revenues from tourism now exceed those from coal mining, which is important as the Russian state subsidies to Barentsburg have been reduced from $28 million in 2009 to only $8 million in 2017. The decaying Tupolev Aerosled is an amphibious ground effects vehicle of the type that was built in the Ukraine between 1964 and 1983. Coal mining at Barentsburg is not profitable, but it is carried on by Russia to maintain a presence on Svalbard. To be profitable, the mine would have to increase by 300% its production, which would exhaust the deposit and jeopardize the continued Russian presence. In 1941, the coal dumps were set afire by inserting petrol-soaked lumber into them and then igniting the lumber. The resultant fires burned for months, denying the Germans the use of the coal. Since Svalbard is under Norwegian sovereignty, Russia maintains a consulate in Barentsburg. At 78 degrees north, it is the northmost diplomatic mission of any kind in the world. In recent years, the exterior of the two large miners' quarters buildings has been spruced up by covering the drab brick facade with colorful panels. A seagull had delivered its smelly verdict on Lenin and his communist revolution. The old "Our goal is communism" sign harkens back to the Soviet era before the collapse of the USSR. The small store in the apartment building had sparse goods on offer. While coal miners still bring electric power to the masses, renewables are threatening its future. Barentsburg has an impressive school with attractive murals that were painted in 2011 showing scenes of Arctic animals, Russian churches, and Russian folk tales. With the decline of Barentsburg's population, the school only has 3 teachers. The Barentsburg Hotel, renovated in 2012, provides visitors with the opportunities to both have a drink and to stay overnight in a town caught in a time warp. It was encouraging to see that work on improving the town is still continuing. As with Pyramiden, the Russian state company named Arktikugol, or Arctic Coal, owns the town and runs the mining operation.
For 24 hours, the work of destruction goes on. A great column of black smoke floats over the rugged, icy mountains overlooking Green Harbour. The German plan to seize all coal for war transport to the far north has been frustrated. Another huge store of fuel has been denied them. The job is finished.
In 1943, the German Kriegsmarine shelled the coal works at Barentsburg and Longyearbyen. Leaving Barentsburg, we sailed back to Longyearbyen along the coast to see the abandoned coal mining facilities. The abandoned material handling facilities at Colesbukta served as a coal port for the coal mine at Grumant, which is some 4 kilometers down the coast. A small railroad transported the coal from Grumant. We have a Russian coal mine that was established in 1912 and abandoned in 1965. Arktikugol still owns the facilities both at Grumant and at Colesbukta. Across Icefjorden, we could see Hagpal Lloyd's 408-passenger MS Europa sailing past some impressive glaciers before we arrived back at Longyearbyen. Longyearbyen, with a population of 2,100, is the largest settlement and administrative center of Svalbard. In the 1990s, Longyearbyen ceased being a coal mining town, and its economic activity is increasingly based on tourism and research. The threat of encounter with a polar bear results in dogs being kept and hikers carrying rifles. However, some of the hikers carry their guns into stores and banks, which doesn't go over well. I stayed in a hostel up the Longyearbyen River Valley where some of the old miners' barracks have been turned into hostels. The area is full of interesting sights, including fields of snow machines and even the occasional caribou wandering about. High on the mountainside above the former miners' barracks were now abandoned coal mines, whilst in the hostel were the racks where the miners would deposit their helmets and lights. A short walk away from the hostel is the Huset, a restaurant serving the Nordic tasting meal, which is an exclusive 5-course dinner paired with wines from different regions. Every dish and every wine was well presented. Looking down to the harbor from the barracks, we could see the Norwegian Coast Guard cutter sailing away. A signature feature of Longyearbyen is the disused line of aerial coal buckets that once served the abandoned coal mines. On the way to the Lufthaven for a flight to Oslo at 4:10 a.m., we stopped to see the Global Seed Vault. The Seed Vault is a secure seed bank that was started as an attempt to ensure against the loss of seeds and other gene banks during large-scale regional or global crises. The Seed Vault is buried 120 meters inside a sandstone mountain with refrigerator units that cool the seeds to minus 18 degrees centigrade. We departed right on schedule at 4:10 a.m. for the 3-hour flight to Oslo.
Take me somewhere nice, to some tired island in your heart called